Our presentation is on king hits. According to the Australian Institute of Criminology, interpersonal violence is a growing problem within society, with over 34% of Australians falling victims to acts of violence per year. In recent times, the Australian media has placed much emphasis on king hit assault cases, which have claimed the lives of over 280 Australians in the past 3 years. As such, several Australian state governments have made efforts to prevent king hits, particularly via the introduction of lockout laws. Such laws attempt to reduce and monitor alcohol consumption and altercations by ensuring alcohol is not served past 1:30 a.m, bottles of alcohol are not sold past 10 p.m, and 48-hour bans are enforced on people deemed to be troublemakers. Whilst lockout laws have proven to be effective in New South Wales, with king hit assaults dropping nearly 40%, according to the Australian Institute of Criminology, the statutory regime has not been as effective in other states. This presentation will outline a primary crime prevention strategy that could be enforced to prevent the growing number of king hits in states where lockout laws have failed. The program will focus on at-risk offenders by placing emphasis on risks of excessive alcohol consumption and the actions to take when faced with an altercation. As a preventative measure, the program will be implemented in high schools to ensure all young people are aware of the dangers of king hits before they even reach legal drinking age. Finally, an evaluation will be done to determine the effectiveness of this crime prevention strategy against king hits. In using the SARA model as a form of crime prevention strategy, the initial problem is alcohol-fueled violence and a binge drinking culture. It is an extremely prevalent problem in Australian culture, particularly with Australian youths and young males. Research conducted by Monash University's Department of Forensic Medicine concluded that 3/4 of king hit assaults between 2000 and 2012 were fueled by alcohol, and the occurrences took place outside of licensed venues. There are various potential responses to this problem. However, it is vital to note that it is the culture itself that needs to be changed, as this is the root of the problem. This can be done by starting with a primary prevention strategy, which with both social and situational crime prevention methods. Social prevention tactics can include a government-wide campaign approach with education in schools, mass media campaigns, and community-based programs. This needs to be a multi-pronged approach and includes situational preventative measures as well for those that aren't in school or are perhaps more affected by severe deterrence methods. This can include an increase in natural surveillance, such as security or bouncers, implementing a Red Frogs program around the city CBD, which is similar to those used at schoolies, and an increase in visible CCTV cameras that are monitored on weekends. The crime prevention techniques currently used include lockout laws, 3 a.m. last drinks, and the introduction of the severe one-punch law, which uses a tough on-crime approach to combat the backlash from both the media and the public after multiple deaths. Based on previous laws and agreements used in nightclub districts in Fremantle, Geelong, and the Surfers Paradise, the little evaluations that were undertaken showed that according to Mazarel et al., there was little compliance from bar owners due to fear of loss in profit, faulty data from police, absence of enforcement, or there were simply no trends found. There is a severe lack of evidence to show that these measures will work and decrease alcohol-fueled violence in the CBD. And Gian Caspro highlighted that such measures could introduce more problems, such as displacement of intoxicated individuals and violence, entry refusal, and loss of profit for venues in the CBD. An example of a similar problem that has been addressed in the past is the Australian government's response to drink driving, starting in the 1970s and 80s. Drink driving was a significant problem, so change was something that could not happen overnight. Hommel tells us that it took years of mass media campaigns, rehabilitation programs for offenders, and education in schools. Brown and Terra believed that the key to the success of this approach was deterrence-based enforcement, as opposed to detection-based. Terra and Brown also found in a study of 8 media campaigns in the United States and Australia, the most successful media campaigns were the ones that emphasised just how serious the legal repercussions were and how likely it would be to get caught. An increase in the penalty for those who commit king hits leads to it being a greater deterrent. Mandatory sentencing for those individuals who king hit others creates further deterrent to future offenders. An article by the ABC highlights a change in Victoria to make the mandatory sentence for king hits 10 years imprisonment. In relation to implementing an education program in schools, Huber et al. Found that after an education program on drugs and alcohol, there was a decrease in intentions to use alcohol and tobacco when measured immediately after the program's completion. CEPTED strategies such as improving lighting and implementing CCTV cameras in an area prevent crime by making it far easier to see offenders and thus catch offenders after a crime, which in turn makes the desire to commit the crime lessened. Mandatory sentencing is not without its drawbacks. It may affect the perception of what is just, as well as resulting in a redefining of other offences. Not to mention that the severity of crimes differs, and placing a mandatory sentence for a particular crime may lessen the effectiveness of the legal system. Under this system, an individual found guilty of a king hit with no severe injuries may still receive the same jail sentence as a king hit that resulted in death. Most king hits occur while intoxicated or under the influence of drugs. This may limit the effectiveness of the increased penalty as a deterrent. With education programs and the implementation of CEPTED measures, one must consider the financial cost against any potential gains made by the program or the CEPTED measures. In some cases, the cost can outweigh the benefits. We used the following references as a basis for our presentation.